Good morning, friends. Okay, this is day 2 of our look at the book of Jonah. And where we're going today is going to lead us towards a sobering realization about who we are as human beings, how our actions affect other people. And it's going to be a hard realization for some of us. And it's something that we need to hear and that we need to see in the scripture, not just to be better followers of God, but this is something that all human beings need, okay? So if you're someone who's struggling with this whole idea of God, or you know somebody who's struggling with this idea of God, this is one of those places in the scripture that you don't even have to have a relationship with God in order to really benefit from this and to see the truth that this contains, okay? Now, I think ultimately this, like everything else, points us towards the reality that there is a God and that God became a person in Jesus and all of those things. But even if you're having a hard time getting there, this right here is going to shed a light in your life that I think is going to be really helpful and really important to you. So we started yesterday by looking at verses 1 through 3 of the book of Jonah. You can go back and check that out yesterday if you missed it. We're going to jump in today in verse 4 and look at the rest of Jonah chapter 1. Okay, so Jonah is on a boat fleeing from God's presence, going not to Nineveh where he's supposed to go to, but going in the opposite direction toward Tarshish. But here's what happened. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. So a great storm came. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. So they live in a culture where every family, every tribe, they're going to have their own gods, individuals. So all of these sailors that are on the boat, they're going to have different gods that they worship, and they all call out to their own gods. And they hurled the cargo that was on the ship into the sea to lighten it from them. So they're crying out to their gods, and they're throwing stuff overboard. But Jonah had gone down into the inner parts of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep. It describes him getting in the boat in verses 1 through 3. It's him going down into the boat. Now we see that he goes down as far as he can, and even lays down. So he's deep down in the darkness in the belly of this ship, and he's asleep. So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Like, what are you doing? Arise, get up, call out to your God." We're all calling out to ours. Get up here, call out to your God. Perhaps your God, perhaps the God will give us a thought that we may not perish. So we're trying our gods. You need to be trying your God also. And they said to one another, "Come, let us cast lots." It's like throwing dice. Let's cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us. So cast lots, throw dice, and it'll point us towards who's the problem here. So they cast lots, and the lots fell on, you guessed it, Jonah. Then they said to him, "Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What's your occupation? Where did you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you?" So they pepper him with questions. And he said to them, "I'm a Hebrew, I'm a Jew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven." So we talked about this yesterday, but when you see Lord in capital letters, it doesn't just mean Lord, it doesn't just mean God, but it means a particular one. It means Yahweh. So I'm a follower of Yahweh. Who's Yahweh? Well, my God is the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. And then the men were exceedingly afraid, and they said to him, "What is this that you have done?" For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. Well, how did they know that? Because he had told them. So apparently at some point on this journey, maybe even the very beginning, why are you going to Tarshish? Well, I'm fleeing from the presence of Yahweh. Well, they don't know much about Yahweh. So they just think he's fleeing from the presence of his God. Our gods will protect us. We'll be fine. But now they're beginning to question his judgment and their judgment, perhaps even letting him on the boat, because he's fleeing from the presence of Yahweh. And who is Yahweh? Well, he's the one who made the dry land. And He's the one who made the sea. So you're telling us, Jonah, that you're fleeing from the presence of your God on the sea, which he made? How do you think this is going to work out for you, buddy? And then they said to him, what shall we do to you that the sea may quiet down for us? Okay, how do we fix this? For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. He said to them, pick me up and hurl me into the sea, and then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come up upon you. I know that it's because of me that you're in the midst of this storm. Throw me overboard and things will quiet down. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard, or another way that can be translated is that the men dug in. They're not going to do it to get back to dry land. But they couldn't, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. It just got worse and worse. Therefore, they called out to Yahweh, O Yahweh, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood. For you, O Yahweh, have done as it pleases you. So they picked up Jonah and they hurled him into the sea. So they pray to Yahweh. They cry out to him and said, don't hold us accountable for this. And then they throw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. And then the men feared Yahweh, not their other gods, but Yahweh exceedingly. And they offered a sacrifice to Yahweh. And they made vows. Now, there are a couple of themes here, and one of the ones that's just so apparent here is that in the midst of the storm, the people end up crying out to Jonah's God, to Yahweh. And we're going to look at more at that tomorrow, because it's just this great theme here about how God works in the midst of suffering and in the midst of mistakes and all of those things. But what I want to focus on here is not so much that, but another theme. Do you see another theme here? So let's wrap up the last verse, and then I want to make that theme apparent for us. Yahweh appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And that, of course, is what the Jonah story is famous for. Jonah and the whale, Jonah and the fish, all of those things, okay? All right, that's the part that we see in the kids' Bible a lot, and that's fine, okay? But there's another theme that we see here that we don't often pick up on in the children's Bible that I think is so important and is going to hit some of us right between the eyes this morning. Jonah is the one here who is going away from what God has called him towards, right? Jonah is the one who is fleeing from the presence of God. He's the one who's in rebellion against God. But who does his rebellion cause trouble for? His rebellion causes trouble for him, but his rebellion causes trouble for everybody that's around him also. In fact, in the beginning, it's causing trouble for other people around him, and he doesn't even realize it because he's down in the belly of the ship. He's blind to the storm that has popped up around him that is affecting all of the people around him. He's not even aware of it, but it's caused because of him. So here's one of the things that I just really believe to be true because the scripture teaches it and because you just see it in everyday life. Oftentimes, it's the stuff in my life that is causing trouble in other people's lives. In fact, one of the things that I like to say a lot is that, here's the deal. If you're not dealing with the junk in your life, you're the only one not dealing with the junk in your life. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're not dealing with your anger issues, then you're the only one around you not dealing with your anger issues. I mean, Jonah is not dealing with his disobedience. So he's the only one there for a little bit who's not dealing with the ramifications of his disobedience. The storm is raging around him that he has caused, but he's in the eye of it, calm down in the bottom of the boat. But it's causing chaos for everybody that's around him. So here's the deal, friends, and this is the place where I think we need to sit back and kind of reflect a little bit in our lives. Is how is our disobedience causing trouble, not for us, but for the people around us? And what then are we called to do to begin to remedy this situation? Well, Jonah begins to realize that if I am going to be able to move forward and to take this burden off of other people, well, then I need to begin to take ownership of my stuff. Is today a day that you recognize that there's some stuff in your life that it's time to begin to take ownership of? And pointing ahead to the future, you just need to know that when you take that stuff to God and you allow Him to begin to work on those things in your life, things work out. He gets thrown into a sea, but as soon as he's thrown into the sea, what happens? God rescues him by means of this fish. It's terrifying to step out of the boat, to step out of that security of whatever it is that's giving you that false sense of security. To step out of that and say, I'm going to deal with my stuff, knowing that God is going to walk through this with me. I'm going to jump out of the boat and it's going to be scary. But God's going to appoint somebody or something, like He sent the fish, that's going to help to see me from where I am to where I'm going. For some of you, the storm that is raging around you is affecting people in ways that you might not realize. It's time today to begin to deal with your stuff and to trust that God is going to lead you through that. God bless you, friends.